Thank you, Vivek, for the kind introduction and for inviting me to do this with. I thought you had this on for a reason. So thank you, Vivek, for having me here to have this conversation with Kanwal. And yeah, Quorum is a special place for me. I've been part of the journey since it started in, I think, July 21. And I want to say that I've never seen Quorum Bombay so packed for any event. So I thought it was me, but the reality is it was Kanwal. So welcome to Bombay, Kanwal, and thank you so much for being with us and having this conversation. I think I'll speak for many consumer entrepreneurs when I say before a lot of us start, the first conversation happens with you. And I can jog back my memory to sort of mid 2016. I was a private equity analyst. I was 24 and a half years old. I had decided to quit my job. I had met Kanwal once and I said, sir, before I start, I want to come down to Bangalore to meet you. Let me know when you're free. And he was kind enough actually to take me out for lunch to an Italian restaurant at Whitefield Mall and then make a bunch of introductions for me. And I had a nice journey. I built a company for 4.5 years. I used to go to Kanwal for advice. And I think a lot of what I am today as a person is because of the journey I had as a D2C founder. And it all started with that first conversation in 2016. So thank you for that. And you know, Kanwal, I wanted to start with sort of your beginning, right? Your journey of figuring out this consumer opportunity. Obviously, you've spent time at HUL. You then spent time at another VC fund and then eventually started by just personally investing in consumer brands. You started investing in consumer brands sort of post 2010. And at that time, I remember there were 6-7 individuals who were investing in these new age consumer brands, right? Everyone believed that FMCG was dominated by really large players. So how did you start? What got you excited about this opportunity? Tell us about the early days, even pre-Fireside, right? Just those first bets, those first investments, that first thesis.
Sure. Like Vivek said, I still call myself an accidental VC because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and couldn't come up with a good enough idea. So this was the second best choice for me, saying, let me at least work with entrepreneurs if I can. And then, fast forward, joined Carlyle Group, then started Helion with 2 other partners. And I think the intuition for me at some point in the late 2010-12 timeframe was really starting to see something happening in the consumer space where on one side there was this large, young consuming class, the millennials and now the Gen Zs. And everybody was looking for, new choices, new brands, and they were getting more and more exposed to, new ideas, especially on the internet and the digital channels. And unfortunately, India has been a very tough market to build brands because the business model of building brands was very dependent on distributing to these small mom and pop stores. So on one side, you have this very complex, distribution challenge. And on the other side, you have the whole media choices, which are very limited to television, newsprint, maybe some outdoors or radio. So there was almost like a vacuum in the market where either you had some regional brands or you had these multinationals or large Indian families whose, next generations have come in and started consumer brands and consumer companies. But really nobody catering to the young generation. So that was really the milieu that I saw in the 2010-12 timeframe. Started experimenting within Helion, which was primarily a consumer tech fund. So made a lot of mistakes. So invested in a brand called Yepme, which was an online fashion brand, didn't work out. Invested in a restaurant chain called Mast Kalandar, didn't work out. Invested in a beauty salon business. So kept piling more and more scars on my back and, really trying to figure out what is happening here, which, is something which is disruptive, but still can create something new in the market. And I think the aha moment happened very interestingly with a gentleman called Neeraj Kakkar. He came to us, in fact cold wrote to us in 2009 if I'm not mistaken, saying I am a Wharton student, I have 10 years in Coke, I want to come and do a summer internship with Helion. So, and I was always fascinated by everything consumer. So I said, okay, this is a great opportunity, let him come in. And he came in and he said, listen, I want to start a consumer brand in India. And I was quite fascinated, saying, what is the motivation here? Anyway, long story short, he came back, started a company called Hector Beverages, and wanted to launch a brand called Zynga, which was a energy drink. And with a lot of hope and excitement, he came to us saying, why don't you give me 2 crore rupees from Helion, and I want to start a new brand. And myself and one of my colleagues, we took it to our partnership and had long debates. And finally, my partner said, listen, we don't understand consumer, we don't understand what is this energy drink, it's a startup, we can't invest. So I said, listen, if that's the case, then let me put some money of my own. So that was literally my first personal investment. Then of course Zynga didn't work out, he launched Paperboat, and then that's the history. I met another company called ID Fresh, PC Mustafa. And this time, I just stood up and said, listen, we missed out Paperboat. By the time Sequoia had put money, and there was a lot of FOMO happening, saying we missed out a good company. So I said, this is something which we really have to invest. Great founder, doing something really disruptive, trying to convert people from, making their own idli dosa batter at home and trying to actually, create a brand out of that. And that literally triggered it off. So we invested from Helion. And he's written a lot of funny articles about getting a bride who had a beard and all kind of stuff. So I don't know if some of you have seen that, but basically that's a marriage that literally taught me a lot of things about entrepreneurship, about brand building, about the humility as a founder. I mean, he's a great guy. And as soon as I invested in him, I decided that I want to pursue this as a career, and I want to leave Helion and not try to create that little niche which somehow was not working out. I'll go all in. And I said, I'm stepping out. And PC said, if you are leaving, then why do I take Helion money? Because there's nobody here who understands my business. And then his condition to me was that if I take Helion money, I'm going to request you to join my board as an independent director, and you can't leave till I tell you to leave. 2014, I mean, I'm still on his board. And I'm still struggling to tell him, listen, now time for me to go. So that was really the very early sparks of the journey, Arjun. I think what I realized as soon as I stepped out is there is nobody who was either a taker or a believer in this whole concept of consumer brand as an investment thesis. So then it became like a very lonely journey that for the next 2-3 years I was investing my own money. And I keep telling everyone, all of us here, I'm sure a lot of you are angel investors. But I was treating it like a day job. I said, I'll take board seats. I will work with the companies. It will be my career choice to work with these companies, but I will also put my own money where my mouth is. And that's when this, almost revolution happened. I invested in Mamaearth, invested in Licious, invested in Badam, Yoga Bar. These are all my personal investments. And then it struck me that there's a interesting dynamic here where there is a consumer who's looking for choices. There is an infrastructure which is emerging where you can disrupt the way brands are built, whether it is on the media side, so Facebook and Google and Instagram, or it is on distribution where the marketplaces that started coming up, Amazon, Flipkart, etc. So why can't brands get built as digital first? And somehow that experience with Mamaearth and Vadam and others was starting to show that early traction. And I also realized that there is no way that anybody, whether you are in a Unilever or a Procter or a Nestle, knows what this phenomenon is. So therefore the intuition that if we can create a fund, and if we can not only provide the capital, but also provide deep ecosystem learnings, how do you build brands? How do you work with the digital ecosystem? How do you understand Amazon? Amazon is an ocean. And all of you or any of you who have worked with Amazon would appreciate that it is so complex that just listing on Amazon is just not good enough. So that's how the idea of this fireside as a construct came out. So what we do, how we do, and so on and so forth. So I'll pause here. I think a long answer to your short question.
So I think that was the sort of genesis of Fireside. And we have a lot of D2C entrepreneurs, a lot of founders, a lot of aspiring founders in the audience, many of whom I know personally. I see so many familiar faces in the audience. Now the word million and 5 million, 10 million, pre, etc., all of those numbers are just like thrown around, right? Sure. Tell us about 2014 to 16. What was the ecosystem like? What were the valuations like? How were deals being done then, and sort of what's happened?
Sure. So, first learning for me, as soon as I stepped out of Helion, was saying, stop thinking $1 million, start thinking
crores.
Rupees, lakhs, crores came later. So the whole idea was that, if we are looking at India as a market, if we are looking at Indian companies, why do we have to think $1 million? So all our conversations, in fact, I remember, there's another story, how I ended up investing in Mamaearth and Licious and others. But, these were companies which were raising money as seed money when I was doing my own personal investing at 10 crores, 15 crores. So there was no $1 million kind of conversations. I think what has happened is that the story over the last 5 years has fast forwarded very fast. And I think largely it's driven by not only the infrastructure and how it's matured. So, it's not only Amazon, it's not only Flipkart, it's not only the Metas and the YouTube, but also the payment systems, the distribution systems, the logistics systems. But also COVID was a huge force accelerator. So if you see the, strange situation in the last 5 years is we have gone through a massive pandemic. It's a huge, human health tragedy. And it has just made everything digital center of the plate. So that really kicked off. And initially, like you said, there was a lot of this expectation that, we can raise money at higher valuation. And some investors have created these bad habits of going back to the $1 million kind of conversations. But honestly, if you ask me, the sensible investor or sensible entrepreneurs are still looking for the right investor coming in at the right time and helping build a business. So to me, that fundamental has not changed. I think we went through a little bit of correction, especially in the 21 and early 22 timeframe.
No, absolutely. And I think I even wrote a LinkedIn post actually about why do we say million? Even if it's 100 crores, let's say 100 crores. But, Kanwal, before we get into the pandemic and sort of what changed in terms of digital consumption, I think a lot of people have not come here to see me, they've come here to see you, and you've met thousands of founders, at least 1,000 plus founders over the last 7-8 years, right? And I've heard, at least from people who are experienced in this investing business, that when you want to make an investment, usually in the first meeting or the first 20 minutes of a meeting, right? So what is that spark that someone who's experienced as you, who's made so many investments and so many successful investments, is looking for when you meet a founder for the first time?
So there's no spark. I genuinely believe that if you see a founder or a founding team in the eye and you connect with them, then you put your money where your mouth is. I have had enough failures. So it's, I have had some very, very high quality, I would say, top percentile founders who have not made it. So this is not a 100% success game, as any of us know. But to me, the fundamental belief is in the founders. And honestly, it's a very high point of passion for me. In fact, at our fund, we have this saying that, everything we do has to be founder first. And we measure ourselves against that. We have external agencies who do surveys and ask founders, saying, how is Fireside, kind of interacting with you? And do they really live up to founder first? Because eventually, the sweat of the founder is more valuable than any money I can provide. It's not even my money. I have taken it from somebody and I'm giving it to the founders. So to me, the biggest attraction, and now, you can retrospectively make great war stories, how, I met the Licious founders or the Mamaearth founders and all, or the board founder for that matter. But fundamentally, I truly believe as an investor, if you get a very strong intuition that this is a good team to back, like Vivek called it, the right jockey before the horse, then everything else you have to put around that. Is there enough market? Is there enough differentiation? How will you build a sustainable business? And we pride ourselves saying all of that we can help influence. But you can't change the fundamentals of who the founder is. So that's really the first, I would say, thing. I am a very intuitive guy, and if I was doing my own investing, I would have written many more checks and taken many more of these. But now I have a big team, and they keep kind of putting more process and more templates and more things, which is fair. I think it's a good combination of doing. But honestly, if you ask me, I don't know if there are many investors in the group, but I think most of you will agree that eventually it is really backing the founder that you're taking a bet at this stage of a company.
Correct. So, Kanwal, you talked about the pandemic and sort of what happened from a health perspective, or also what happened from a consumption perspective, right? And being someone who operated a business through this time, specifically in the health space, we saw demand like we had never seen before, right? So, there are basically, I would say, there is the pre-pandemic, the pandemic, and then the post-pandemic phase which we are living in, right? Pre-pandemic, people were questioning whether digital brands or digital-only brands could be built. In the pandemic, we all, at least I drank the Kool-Aid and said, digital is the only place people are consuming. People are never going back offline. I remember writing somewhere that I buy everything online. Who buys anything offline, right? And obviously, post sort of mid-2022, things changed. And now everyone is sort of talking about this buzzword called omnichannel, right? So where is the world now in April 2023 in your eyes in terms of consumption?
So I think if you go back to the first basic principle, saying there are not enough brands in the country. So if you start with that premise, then the question is, what exactly is the need in the market? Where is the gap? What is the consumer insight? I think and I'm being a little controversial here, but a lot of entrepreneurs, especially consumer brand entrepreneurs, forget that the first point of their journey is understanding where is the problem, what is the insight, what am I trying to solve for. So sometimes I've found that the obsession with product becomes bigger than obsession with what problem I'm trying to solve for.
I'm just asking you one more question specifically on this, and sorry to interrupt you. Have you seen, because I have been in this place, founders build products for themselves instead of for customers? Like what I will consume is what I want to build. But there's not necessarily a large consumption set that will also like that.
So answer is yes. But I would only argue the second part of your statement, saying that and when you say Arjun, Vaidya is a consumer, actually it's not a bad problem to have, because there are many Arjun Vaidyas like you. So if, again, there is it's a very celebrated story of the Mamaearth founders and how they found that, for their son, they could not get the right products, and that's how it started. I find founder stories are actually very relevant to the ethos and the passion that you're building the brand for. So if I find a founder who says, listen, I connect with this brand because it's my personal experience, I actually give it higher weightage. So in a sense that you can argue, we used to be in levers, we used to say, put yourself in the shoes of Kavita of Kanpur. That was a standard terminology that was used in levers, saying she is your audience and you start thinking about her. Now, I cannot imagine what Kavita of Kanpur looks like. So then you have to do consumer research and market research and all that. While today, most founders are actually looking at their own experiences and figuring out what makes sense for them. So I am actually a believer that if it is a problem you are facing, then again, Utsav is here, Meghna and Shorvi from Slurp Farm. They found this as a problem that they didn't know what to feed their own kids. And then the whole idea of the brand, and I can tell you again and again and again examples of where successful brands have been built because the founders felt that they felt some hole in their own story or their own, problem statement. But having said that, if you still go back to the basic insight, saying there is a problem. Now, what is the best way I can solve this problem? There was a point of time when a digital first was the right way to do it. And honestly, even before COVID helped accelerate it. Today, what we are finding is that digital first still works up to a point. The only challenge is that the cost of customer acquisition has become totally out of line because everybody is trying to do it. So everything is getting commoditized, and therefore you have to pay more and more. It's a classic demand-supply situation. So now what we are finding is that this whole offline piece that you talked about is becoming a very legitimate way of expanding your business. To give you an example, if you take the journey of Mamaearth, started out as a pure digital first brand. He started out selling on Amazon and literally on Amazon. I mean, that was 2016 December. He was a part of the launchpad announcement by Amazon in India. Understood a lot of the consumer feedback. It became almost like a laboratory of reviews, ratings, comments. Launched his own website because he could then engage with the consumers directly, and expanded to other marketplaces. Today, 40% of the business is from quote unquote offline. But the beauty is, it is not the classic, this is offline, this is online. And that's why omni is such a nice word, because we are talking a 360 mindset. I can be talking to the consumer on Facebook and on Instagram, and I can be selling in a neighborhood store. I can be looking at, we have a company called Sleep Company. They have developed a new technology of how they can give you a mattress with a better experience. And it actually works. I'm personally a consumer of that. Now, what they have done is they are opening up stores where they sell nothing. So if you walk into a Sleep Company store, and trust me, it is the most different experience of walking into any mattress store that you will ever experience, because every other store is stacked with mattresses. So the whole training there is, pull out one, show me one, pull out one, show me one. They have nothing like that. They just have 5 beds. You can go and sleep on them. Just you experience it. Their backend, their logistics, their distribution, their payment system is all one single integration. Now, to me, that is omnichannel. And I think that is what infrastructure is allowing us to do. And again, lots and lots of examples which are starting to emerge in that. So honestly, if you ask me, whether I'm digital first, whether I'm offline, whether I am on Amazon, whether I'm on my own website, are all channels. Eventually, if consumer loves what I am giving them, and I build an engagement, a story with them, then what channel I choose is a matter of my stage of my business and the strategy that I want to adopt. So I don't think there is no question of a divide between digital versus the offline.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing you said is digital first up to a point, right? It's a great channel to start, and then from there you go forward. Now, there are a lot of early stage entrepreneurs in the audience, and I think money is harder to come by now. And we lived through this time period of 2 years, which was pretty crazy, and now money is harder to come by, right? And so in this time, there is this intangible concept when building a consumer brand called brand or brand spend. Now, when you do performance marketing on a day-to-day basis, you see what's the ROI you get. It may be high, it may be low, etc. But you get that visibility into the number. But then founders ask me, how much should I spend on brand? I'm not getting any ROI. Money is hard to find. How do I do it? So what would you say? Because at the end of the day, the job for a consumer entrepreneur is creating a brand, right? But how do you sort of throw money into this intangible well when you don't know what's going to happen with this?
So, this is something that has been done for 100 years, 200 years. So throwing money, I hope there are no marketeers who are cringing at the word of throwing money at brand building. That's the purest form of investment you can make in building a brand. So I think where we got a little bit waylaid was trying to define ROI for everything. So honestly, performance marketing has a role up to a point, because you are using that to get customers in a very specific context. But trust me, if you don't have the brand story right, if you don't have the brand mix right, it's never going to end. You'll continuously keep paying to acquire new customers.
Law of diminishing marginal utility.
And that's already happening. A lot of companies which have started off with a bang, and now they're saying, no, we are in a trap. We can't get out of that trap. Now to the second point, saying it is not necessarily that you have to throw money at the brand. There are so many ways to do it. And especially on digital, today people are experimenting with all kinds of new ideas, content, influencers, communities. And these are fairly simple hacks which you can do. I'll take one interesting example. And this is, to me, the purest form of, how they have done this fantastic job. We have a company called Vaidya. Now they are solving very deep menstrual health problems for women through Ayurvedic products. So it's a proven science, it's natural, it's good for you. But they also realize that, you can't put up an ad on a Facebook saying, if you have PCOS, come to me. it's like almost simplistically stupid. I mean, nobody's going to believe you. Second is you're targeting young women for whom this is such a taboo subject that they don't even know who to talk to in their own family. So what they have done is they have built brick by brick, a community they call Circle of Sisterhood. I think now they have 50,000 plus members. They talk to each other. So they talk to each other about their problems. They talk to each other about saying, how do I solve for this? And in a very non-intrusive way, the company is engaging with them and helping them. And trust me, one of the founder, Rachna, she's so passionate about this. Every second day she'll send me a WhatsApp post about some woman who couldn't conceive and, tried their treatment and actually had a baby. And, she literally, called them to the hospital, and at the maternity bed, she's, shot a video saying, I'm so grateful. So all this is brand. And I don't think this is throwing money at anything. So eventually it's about the core ethos of what your brand is and how you communicate that to the consumer.
And it can be built through organic channels.
It can be built in a combination. See, I'm not saying don't spend on brand advertising. Don't spend. I mean, again, take an example. Again, I talked about Slurp Farm. They made a big decision to sign up with a celebrity who, almost signified the ethos of what the brand is. Anushka Sharma. Now, she's a big celebrity. But they are not going around putting up ads saying, Anushka says do this, Anushka says do that. So they have integrated her own ethos, her own lifestyle into how they communicate. They called 200 women, mom influencers, into one venue where she came, and they had this lovely interaction. They talked to each other and all. And they made some reels out of that. And I think they got some 100 million views or something like that. So these are all, things which are, very, very disruptive, but not necessarily very expensive.
And Kanwal, there's a lot of talk about valuation now, right? In the times we live in. And we've seen a time not so long ago when there was a lot of inflation happening. And now things have changed, right? So when I speak to early stage founders about their first round or their second round, there's always this what multiple, what valuation, how much dilution, etc., all of that, right? And we were talking before we even came up about choosing the right partner, even if it may not be the right number. So any advice to sort of early stage entrepreneurs as they straddle through this journey? Because I'll be honest, it's complex, right? You've not been through the journey, you don't understand it as much. You're being shown various options, and then how to sort of rationalize this conundrum or these choices?
So I think to me, the first point is the most important point. This is a very different business. This is a very different DNA. You have to choose a partner who understands your DNA. I'm not saying Fireside is the only answer. And we also have, we'll do 7-8 deals a year. So it's not that, we can be writing 100 checks. But there are people who believe in that. I mean, what you guys do and what World Invest does, what Sofina does. I mean, there are lots of people who get the rhythm of the business. So to me, first question to ask for is, am I going... So first you have to believe that I have something exciting which investors will like. If that is not the honest truth, then let's first figure that out. If you have the choice of going to various investors, then I would say first decide who is the partner who, first of all, understand the rhythm of my business. Then, what value can they add to me? I'm saying in that order. Even if they don't add value, but if they start telling me I want to see 30% growth on growth, month-on-month growth, and I don't care about profitability, I think that is the slippery slope which you want to avoid. Third is a very interesting, less known fact, and I'm taking the liberty of talking about it. Don't raise more money than you need. I think the temptation is, as investors, we raise bigger funds. We are incentivized to write bigger checks. It need not be the reason why I should take more money. Give you an interesting example, and I think this is public knowledge. Mamaearth, the founders own, I think, 35 or 40% of the company. Company is valued in the last round at over $1 billion. This is all facts, so I'm not, violating anything. The people have talked about higher valuation and all that. The ownership of Mamaearth founders today is as high as several of the big celebrated unicorn founders because they own less than 10%. So if I can build a business thoughtfully, if I can build a business with the right unit economics, if I can build a business with a partner who's not forcing me to do certain things, I can actually construct a model where as a founder I own meaningful ownership in the company at whatever the endpoint is. Endpoint could be 100 crores, endpoint could be 500 crores, it could be 5,000 crores. So my own point is that the objective of becoming a brand entrepreneur is to build brands. And if you do it with the right thoughtfulness, and that's the truth of what has happened in this country for 100 years. There are celebrated, take Harsh Mariwala. I mean, he's built a brand to be proud of. Take Dabur, take Imami. They have all spent 25, 30 years. That's how long it takes to build brands. But they have created tremendous value. So that's my point, that eventually if your model is that I want to build a great brand, then raise money as much as you need, work with the right partners, and don't keep diluting your ownership just because somebody is willing to write a big check. I think to me, that is the biggest learning for me, coming from a tech fund kind of a investing background to this one.
I think on the partnership, Chaitanya, the founder of WakeFit, told me a very interesting thing. He said, when you take money from someone, it's may not be a marriage, but it's definitely a very long-term relationship. So be sure you're okay to have breakfast, lunch or dinner with that person every month for the next 5 to 7 years. If you're okay to have that, then that's sort of the right partner for you. And I think the other thing, Kanwal, you talked about is, if you take more money than you need, you're on this constant treadmill, having to show the growth that requires the next round to happen, the value to be created, etc., all of that. So I think patience when building consumer brands, because brands are not built in very short periods of time. And if you think of all the brands we love as well, they take time to be built. I think last two questions before we open it up to the audience Q&A. Everyone's obviously talking about deployment, but I think as a fund manager as well for you, exits is an important topic, right? So if you could just tell us about how you see the market for exits, whether it's IPO, the activity of strategics in the market, and how should founders think about that?
So I think once again, if you are starting a business and you want to build a brand saying, in 2 years I want to exit and make a lot of money, that's absolutely the wrong way to think about it. I think to me, and my daughter has just turned entrepreneur last year, she is building a food brand in the US. The only advice I have for young entrepreneurs is think of this as a mission in life. It's a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year journey, and be willing to, first of all, go through that grind and the willingness to live that part. So therefore, the reason to start a company is not to get rich. There are many other ways to do that. Second is that if you are building a brand with the right, I keep using the word thoughtfulness, and now people are talking about responsibilities. So, the ESG is a whole new chapter to talk about. I think the fundamentals of what you are building, if they are strong, then the exitability is built into that business model. So the beauty of this country is that there are not enough brands. Today you have situations where at 15, 20 crores, you can find an exit. At 50 crores, you can find an exit. At 100 crores, you can find an exit, and so on and so forth. So therefore, as an investor, I am betting on exitability being a given as long as I'm doing the right things in the right thoughtful manner. Then the question is the timing and the ambition, especially of the founder. Now, if a Varun or an Aman or a Vivek or Abhay of Licious, they want to go IPO or PC or Neeraj, these are guys who have said from day one, we are in it for 20 years, we are going to build a lasting business, lasting brand, and we will take it IPO. More power to them. But then you have companies like Yoga Bar, where they built a very strong brand, they built a business which was 100 crores. And they said, this is a great point to then get a partner who can help us see the brand go to the next level. And I think both are absolutely legitimate points. So as investors, you have to also believe in the rhythm of the founders. Like you had an opportunity, you could sell your brand to a strategic. I'm sure it was completely your decision to take that call rather than some investor forcing you, or at least it should have been.
Correct.
So I would say that the good part about our businesses is that if you can build a business without guzzling so much of capital that the unit economics, the profitability, everything is not clear, then, one of the big challenges with India has been that, we have seen a lot of markups for VC funds, but not enough exits.
Correct.
And I think that is the problem to solve. And that problem will only get solved if you built in exitability metrics from your mindset. Doesn't mean that you have to exit, and we are very proud of the fact that a lot of our founders say, listen, we want to build it for 10 years. Because my journey along with the founder need not be for the same 10 years. But if the business is being built on the right platform, then I will find a way to exit. Why should the founder have to exit? I think that's the real, I would say, the balance.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. A lot of people ask me, when I started the business, did I think I'd sell it? I never thought that I would sell the business until I got the opportunity to sell the business. You build a good business, various options come along the way, and then one may be this. Last question, Kanwal, for you as the conversation is drawing to a close. I wanted to talk about trends, right? You've talked and I've read about India to global, about quick commerce, about omni-channel. So can you tell us as we end this conversation, what are the trends you're looking forward to in the consumer space in 23? And are there any spaces that remain open to play or exciting?
Sure. So all that you mentioned are channels. So these are not trends for me. These are the ways to reach the consumer with the right trend. So I think the biggest trend, which is in my mind going to be the next big disruption over the next 10-15 years, is the whole focus on wellness and healthcare. I think we have seen such a tremendous shock to the system, to the global system after COVID, that the consciousness of wellness has seeped into everything we eat, everything we put on our body, everything we live around us. And we are finding that doing things with wellness as a theme is almost like a no-brainer in terms of the high ground. Now we have obviously very specific companies like nutraceuticals, supplements and all. We have companies like Slurp Farm, we have companies like Gynoveda. So the spectrum can be very wide. So that is certainly one area of focus. I think second is we are looking more and more at consumer health itself. So in consumer health, we are seeing that there are solutions now emerging for specific diseases like diabetes and heart conditions and mental illness, child health, gut health. So these are all areas that we are seeing. Of course, you are smiling because this is what you are doing. So again, for me, this is again something personally which excites me a lot. And we have doubled down on that. We have somebody in our team who's focusing on healthcare as an area of focus, because consumer health converges completely with our business. So that's a trend that we are seeing. Another trend that we have started following and doing actually some deals in is the whole space of gaming. And gaming, not because we believe that, the success of, say, a Dream 11 all, we don't do real money gaming. But we believe that the next generation of the Gen Zs and, a lot of my colleagues who have younger kids, they don't understand Instagram, Facebook, all of those. They are on, on Twitch, on Roblox. So their world is now in a different environment. I don't even know what that is. So I have a lot of younger people who are looking at that. But the beauty is that the convergence if you want to talk to them, you talk to them in those platforms, and then the brands become relevant there. So we are also trying to, expand our worldview. Now coming to your second point is, how do you leverage the channels and the opportunities? So one is, Omni is big for us. I mean, everything we are doing, we are building playbooks, and hopefully, like we had published playbooks on how to work with Amazon, we have published playbooks on how to work with D2C. One day we'll publish a playbook on how to build an omni-channel brand. I think this second tier or Bharat is the next big one. I don't think you can take what you are selling in a big city and transport it into those things. So you have to start from ground zero. I launched Sunsilk sachets in India as a management trainee. And I can't tell you the thesis behind selling a shampoo sachet to a rural consumer and selling a Sunsilk shampoo bottle to an urban consumer is completely different. I mean, it's not even the same story. It's completely a different situation. Third thing is building global brands from India. I mean, that's my personal passion. In my lifetime, hopefully, I'll see a few brands which truly build the same, cadence, the same, almost consumer love in global brands that we have seen brands coming to India. Can we say proudly that we have a brand from India? That at least one I want to see before I hang up my boots.
I think it's been an amazing conversation, and I think the end as well talks about sort of what's going to happen from here. I've had many opportunities to interact with Kanwal one-on-one over the years, but after this conversation, I'm remembering getting into the car and heading to the airport, and I was dating Trisha at the time, and I remember calling her and being so excited to want to build a consumer brand, and I'm kind of feeling the same way. It's always awesome to speak to you, Kanwal, because I think the conversation is real, and for all of us who have been listening intently, there is a lot to take away on consumer behavior, on insight, and on going forward. So before I take questions, a big round of applause, and thank you, Kanwal, for being with us in Bombay and literally packing the room. I haven't seen Quorum so packed, I'm saying it again. But I think we'll have maybe 15 minutes for questions. So yeah, we'll take the questions, and first hand, that's the first one I saw, so we'll go for it.
Hi, so thank you so much for a wonderful talk. My name is Harry, I'm from Japan. I've been in India 16 years. And when I first came to India, all my friends said, you're not sensible, why are you coming to India? But the sensible founder thing, I think is something that people realize after the fact, maybe it's after 15 years. So I run India's largest sushi business, Sushi and More, which is also found in the Quorum Club. I also run Kikoman, which is a global brand. So I do different things, but can you talk a little bit about the sensible founder? I don't think they exist, including me.
So there is a fine line between ambition and the other side of ambition, but yeah.
Sure. So one of my favorite casual conversation quotes is that every entrepreneur needs to have some element of what we call in Hindi pagalpan or junoon to be a good entrepreneur. So therefore, it is sensible in the classic sense is not as sensible, because unless you have that gene in you which says, listen, I want to disrupt what is working well with the rest of the world, you can't be a successful entrepreneur. At least that's what my experience is. But I think to specifically talk about, at least in the context of our business, we have strongly believed always that doing the right things for the right reason at the right time is ultimately the core ethos of the founder. And we respect, in fact, we love founders who will come and challenge something that we will say. And honestly, if you ask me as an investor, if I can find that, humility in me to believe that, I don't know everything, and trust me, we don't know everything or anything. A founder decides that I have a certain way of thinking about business and this is the right way to do it. To me, I respect that a lot. I mean, again, I keep talking about a few names, but these are people who have demonstrated like Varun is a role model for us. I mean, the way he's building Mama, the way he's thinking 5 years, 10 years out. So to me, sensible comes from thinking of doing the right thing for the right reason, and not because an investor is telling you something and you are forcing yourself to do it when you don't believe in it, or because you have some motive which is not business-led but some external factor, like saying, in 2 years I need to make 1,000 crore valuation. I mean, to me, valuation word itself is a dangerous slope. So if you can create, and I've said this in many forums, and sometimes people make fun of this, but I keep saying, create value, valuation will follow. And we have seen a very reverse phenomena at least in the Indian context for many, many years, where we say, first let's give valuation, the value will follow. I mean, you have to live up to that valuation. And honestly, some of these are anecdotal points, but I would highly respect, and like you said, as a founder and as an entrepreneur who's built a business over 15 years and has seen success, I mean, that itself is an example of how you can do things in a I would say, sensible way, or just the word I would change from sensible to responsible, because again, the passion is now about saying doing well is not enough. You have to do good also, and all of us need to look into our hearts and say, are we really doing good as much as we are doing well?
Go ahead.
Hi. You mentioned about not taking more money than is required. 2 points here. Given what has happened in the last 6-8 months, where suddenly funds have dried up, is there like a buyer's remorse with a lot of founders that, hey, we had the chance to take more money and we kind of missed out? And addendum to that is, when Uber was fighting with Didi Chuxing in China, there, honestly, it was the question of who had the bigger war chest. So, putting those two in context, your view.
So, see, the second one is easier to answer. I think there are businesses, and I won't argue against that, which have a very winner-take-all mindset. I mean, again, philosophically, you can always, argue the point. So this fight to the death and last man standing, we have seen in a lot of categories where, there is a belief that once I have all the consumers, then I can do what I feel like. Honestly, not true, but at least that's a mindset. And, so I won't go down that path because, there are too many examples of that. I think the first one is an interesting one. If I have to flip the question on its head, if somebody was offering me 50 and I took 25, my belief is if you had taken 50, you would have spent 50. So you may still be in the same place at the same time, but with a much worse situation where you have burnt more money and may not have seen the kind of thing. Building consumer brands, like Arjun said earlier, is not, you can't force the pace of building consumer brand. The ecosystem, the environment, the entire let's call it the foundation of what you're doing has to be put into place. So I don't see why you should be taking more money when you don't. See, the question is, what do you do with? Now, if you say, instead of taking money for 12 months, I am taking money for 18 months and I'm going to spend it thoughtfully, that is fair. How many entrepreneurs will follow that and how many investors will let them follow that is really the question. So I don't think there is buyer's remorse. I certainly feel that today the questions being asked are the right questions, and the companies which are getting funded are still getting funded because they are answering the questions in the right way.
And Kamal, wouldn't you agree the world today looks like the world in 2019 and early 20 anyways, right? That is how the world was.
So I think, honestly, if you see the consumer brand side of things, 2015 when I started investing was the other end of it. Nobody wanted to invest, what is this digital brands, how can you, marketing costs are very high, I don't even think a lot of VCs know what marketing costs are. So it was a complete diametrically opposite. Then it became like the flavor of the month, then it became like, I am going to do 2 consumer brands because everybody else is doing it, and if I am lucky, then these 2 will become unicorns, that also never happens. So I would say that this up and down happens in our business, and that's the business we are in. You're trying to forecast trends, you're trying to do it. All I am saying is, repeatedly, is that the rhythm of a consumer brand business is different. And that's something you can't challenge. It has become accelerated because the infrastructure is allowing the acceleration, not because we are throwing money at it to do whatever we feel like doing.
Who's next? It's
We'll
going to be
take
tough.
One last question, maybe from this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have Ashni ask the question. She runs an exciting brand called Nibblers.
Hi, thank you so much for today. So, Kanwal, I want to actually ask you, there's a lot of conversation on building brands sustainably, right? Earlier, it was celebrated when you got funded. So now when people are running stuff bootstrapped, it's as celebrated as what it was when you were funded back in the days, right? So if I just see the difference between a funded brand and a bootstrap brand, how would you see the difference in building a brand sustainably, taking that as the premise of it, irrespective of it's funded or it's bootstrap, right? What's the premise of that sustainability that VCs look for or anybody looks for in building the brand?
See, sustainability, I'm assuming you mean more from long-term sustenance of the brand
Yeah.
and not from sustainability in the context of environment, right?
No.
Because
Like
both are
long-term,
important.
long-term sustenance and
Economic.
building the brand. Yeah.
See, my personal belief is that if you are building it thoughtfully, responsibly, sensibly, sustainably, I mean, all these are, I would say words which all describe having that ethos to say, I want to do the right thing. So is my unit economics right? Am I able to get the right set of customers? Again, the obsession of saying, a lot of times we find that there are niche brands which are very, very strong, loyal customer base. But because they are doing something which is very unique to that audience, they will have that very strong, loyal customer base and they will build a very strong, sustainable brand. So first question is, why do we need VC money if we can find the right combination of the product, the brand, the consumer, and the right fit with the consumer? Second is that investors would love to invest in brands which have been built on these premises. So today our FOMO happens when we see brands like these and we are not able to invest in them. Good founders with the right mindset, thinking about the right metrics, doing it thoughtfully. Now the challenge is for a fund like ours, now we have a fund which is a large fund. So we cannot write a 2 crore check and make 10 crores out of that because that doesn't really impact the overall returns of my fund. So I may not be the right investor, but there are so many other investors for whom, which is what I love doing when I was doing my own investing, saying, in fact, I mean, again, this is not a brag statement, but my personal investing portfolio has delivered far, far better, I mean, multiples of better return than anything I'm doing at Fireside. Because you are doing it in smaller chunks with companies which you enjoy working with, and then the upside comes out of that. So I would say the investor should intercept this sustainable brand rather than building it, because one of the big things that I keep hearing saying, what do investors want to hear and therefore how do I design for it? I'm thinking it's never going to work because investors mindset changes every month. Today I hear CM2 positive, so everybody starts saying CM2 positive. Tomorrow I say CM3 positive and CM3 positive.
Yeah, I think I would agree to the last point, and I think it's a great way to end the conversation. Build the business for yourself, because I remember in 2017 a large investor telling me, brands are not built online. If you're going online and you don't want to invest, start some offline. And I was like, no, but I failed offline, so I can't do it. And eventually 1 year later we had a conversation, and D2C or online brands was the sort of conversation. So look, I think it's been an amazing conversation. I looked at my phone to check the time, and I have 12 messages from my wife from quotes of notes from this conversation, and I hope you guys took away as much as both of us did from this conversation. I'll leave you guys with just one thought, right? Kanwal talked about the rhythm of building consumer brands and the patience as well. So this, again, we go back to sort of early 2018. I was in Bangalore for a wedding, and I was staying at Leela, and that's where you do a lot of your meetings. So we met at Leela in the coffee shop, and I was probably going through a really rough time at Dr. Vaidya's, in the sense that we were at 20 orders a day after 1.5 years. So I was thinking, I left this private equity job, I got really excited about this consumer story, and nothing seems to be happening, right? And Kanwal said one thing, he said, look, it's not there yet, but you're doing the right things with consumer brands. At some point, you'll hit that inflection point. And he said the words inflection point, and when you hit that inflection point, you won't be able to control it. And that year, actually, we've not had this conversation, but in Diwali, we started hitting that inflection point, and then things started moving. So I think a very, very important point on patience as you're building for a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year horizon. I think for me, the consumer opportunity remains as exciting as it did when I started. India is still fundamentally brand starved. I wear this band with the Indian flag on my hand, have been wearing it for the last 13 years. And so for all of us, we're really excited about the opportunity with consumer. Thank you to all of you for filling the audience, being such an engaged audience, and hearing what Kanwal had to say and my few questions. And thank you, Kanwal, for coming here and being with us and sharing your amazing thoughts.
Thanks Arjun, thanks Kanwal. I hope we all hit our inflection point soon enough.